Matt Wyatt, it's great to talk to you. Welcome back to T-Town.
What's up, Ryan? Good to hear your voice, man.
Man, I'm good to hear your voice as well, and hope all is going well in your new show over there. I know it's new college football season. Everything going well?
Yeah, so far so good. Hard to believe it feels like we blink our eyes and we're on the back half of the season now, already into November. I was kind of taken aback today. I started counting it up, and over here, we're, 20 days from the Egg Bowl and the Iron Bowl and all? I'm like, yeah.
2 weeks from today is Thanksgiving. Chew on that
crazy.
for a minute.
That's crazy.
My pastor told me many, many years ago, he told me that once you get older, he said, I'm telling you, time flies. He said, I blink and it's 30 years. He said, that's the one thing that as you get older, time flies. And he was not lying. He's dead on it.
He's not. And, kids make it even more apparent, I think.
Yes.
We have one little girl, she's 7 years old, first grade. And, the first 2 or 3 years, everything was kind of in slow motion, and we liked it that way. And then it's like she went to bed a toddler and woke up the next morning, and she's 4 feet tall in the first grade. Like, where did all this time go? And you're right, the older we get, man, it zips right on by.
All right, so let's go to Joe Moorhead just for a couple of minutes. Give us some information, because we're still trying to get to know Joe Moorhead. What's it been like working with him in year number 1?
Man, I tell you, Joe is a delight of a human being, man. He really is. Anybody, in the organization, in the building, in the radio crew, the players, if you get to know Joe, you like him. And, so what happens is, a lot of the fan base got to know him personally, got to meet him and kind of get to know him. And, people really are rooting for him to have some success, because he's the kind of guy you want to have around for a while. And he's kind of like polar opposite, frankly, on the personality scale from a guy like Mullen and others. But, as you and I know, in the game of college football, that's not taken into account. It is strictly wins and losses and production and that kind of thing. So we're rooting for him. And so far, they have, I think, shown the ability to fight and scratch and claw week to week to get a little better, which they have done offensively. And, defensively, he's coaching a team that's been loaded from the get-go, and they're really playing good football. So nobody really gives them much of a chance to win on Saturday. And for good reason. Look, Alabama is as good a football team as we may have ever seen in college football. They still have to go play out the entirety of their season. They got to do it week to week. But even beyond this week, there's 2 games that are winnable. You get Arkansas at home, you get Ole Miss on the road. You're sitting there right now at 6 wins and a chance to go play in the postseason again. And so I think right now, recruiting's going well for Joe, too, and staff. He's kind of hit it off with a lot of the high school coaches here in Mississippi. They like him. They like the staff. They work extremely hard, and so they make a lot of appearances at these schools, and that's going over well. He picked up a couple of commitments today from 2 of the more highly recruited kids in the state of Mississippi in next year's class. So, all in all, after a slow start on offense, things are positive again for Joe Moorhead.
I think I told you this story. We were down in Destin, and we had just picked up our credentials, and we were sitting there hanging out in the lobby. This was the night before the SEC spring meetings got started, and he happened to be checking in. And he went over out of his way. Most coaches in the SEC don't do this. He went over and introduced himself because I think he was new, and he wanted to get to know some of the media guys. And we sat there and had just a short conversation. But I was impressed, and as soon as he walked away, I was like, that personality will be able to recruit in the South.
Yeah. Well, and you know what, Ryan? It's true. I agree. That's not Joe just looking for an opportunity to make a good impression. It's just kind of the way he is he's interested in other people, all of them. He does not look for opportunities to avoid other people. He looks for opportunities to talk to people, and he's a great guy. In my opinion, there have been times we've had him on the radio, have him in the studio, and prior to the interview, we spent 15 minutes, and all he could talk about was his kids' little league basketball team, and they're playing for a championship. He's a dad first. Anyway, he's just a good guy, and I think our players really enjoy playing for him. But early on, they were catching a lot of criticism because of the lack of punch in the pass game. But the last couple of weeks against A&M and La Tech, they've thrown the ball pretty well, threw 6 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks and no picks. Had 4 TD passes in the first half against La Tech. They were really efficient. So I think people are hopeful that they've got them headed in the right direction.
We're talking to Matt Wyatt. He does radio throughout the state of Mississippi, The Zone, down in ESPN 105.9 and also ESPN 95.1, The Fan, 10 until noon. We're talking college football with him. He's also the color analyst. Let me ask you, when you look at this Mississippi State defense, certainly they grab our attention. Is those numbers a little bit skewed, or do you think this is the number one defense in the SEC?
Now, and we're talking about Mississippi State
Mississippi
or
State.
Alabama?
No, Mississippi State. I mean, they got the numbers in pretty much all major defensive categories.
Yeah. Well, I would tell you that legitimately, Ryan, they're right up there with Alabama, and they're certainly up there with LSU. And then this weekend is going to be their biggest test, and it's on the road. But, you just look at some of the numbers that we don't see too often, right? Like this is a group of players that they've given up 9 touchdowns all year long. In the last 51 possessions, their opponents have scored 2 touchdowns. So opponents are 2 for the last 51. They're really, really deep on a defensive line. So what they're doing is they're not getting worn out in the late third quarter, fourth quarter. They're really fresh, paired with they're not, because they're getting off the field, they're not having to play a ton of snaps, They have legitimate NFL players throughout their depth. They've got a couple of first-rounders on the defensive front, Simmons and Sweat. Jonathan Abram at safety is a guy he's a legitimate 4-3 guy in a 40. He's at 6 feet tall, and he's a hitter, and he's really smart. And so he's secretly way up there on a lot of NFL evaluators' lists at safety. The corners are playing really good football. Now, they haven't been challenged the way they're going to be challenged Saturday, but you got tall, big corners at State who are locking some people down. And, man, Dantzler on one side is like 6'2", about 200, and Jamal Peters on the other side at literally, he's a starting corner at 6'2 and a half and about 220 pounds. So they're big. They're hard to screen against on the outside because the corners are big and physical. So they have all the right pieces. And I think there's a lot of truth to the idea that, this is the kind of game that those NFL scouts, when they're looking at defensive players, that they are, salivating over with what Alabama's going to put out there and Quentin Williams and all those guys and what State's going to put out there. Regardless of the outcome, you're looking at 2 of the better defenses in the country.
Matt, let me go back to Dave Aranda against LSU. They made Tua look somewhat human because up until that point, he didn't really look. He looked like a superhuman. And I know you and I have spent a lot of time talking about Tua. Is there anything that Bob Shoop can take from that game and say we can do some of that to confuse him?
Well, I think so, but more so than scheme, Ryan, is just defense is a little different than offense. There's just only so many variations you can line up in on defense. And there's just only so many ways to blitz somebody on defense, So it's just more about, can a guy win physically? That's really what it is more about. And the best example of that would be, you look at a couple of on the other side of the ball in that LSU game, a couple of sacks of Joe Burrow, when he had 6-man protection, 5 linemen in the back, and Alabama's only rushing 4 guys, but Quentin Williams split a double team, and then you got a defensive end who's getting double teamed, he splits it also. When you can't block 4 guys with 6, you don't even have to blitz, right? So really what defensive ball, and what it has come down to all year for State and for Shoot, is they go out there, they do some blitzing, they bring safeties and nickel off the hash, they rotate coverage, they bring the corner. But really what it's boiling down to is more often than not, they are getting penetration on the line of scrimmage, they are harassing quarterbacks, they're not allowing them to be comfortable. And that's where I think this game rests for the State defense. Look, I don't care, I'll be honest with you, with Tua Tagovailoa and the receivers of Alabama, if you give him time to throw, he will complete the ball up and down the field on you. It's going to happen. So your only way of getting off the field is you have to whip their offensive line and make it uncomfortable. And so I think there's a lot of pressure on Bama's offensive line in this game. And, man, all the pressure defensively is on State's defensive front to get back there.
Matt, when you look at everything that you broke down from Tua Tagovailoa, you went through every single throw that he made last year. Is there any way you saw this coming?
Yeah, I would say sure there is. Last year, at the end of the year, I was doing an interview, and somebody said, you know, can Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa, are they both SEC starting quarterbacks? And the way I answered it, and again, this was at the end of last season, the way I answered it is, yes, is the answer. Jalen Hurts could start for a lot of teams. He's a starting quarterback in college football, but Tua Tagovailoa is a first-rounder. And they kind of laughed at me because he hadn't played as much, you know, but I could see then he's just doing some things quicker and better, more proficiently, more consistently than we've seen in college football. That's just a fact. And I am an analyst, Ryan, who I go out of my way a lot of times to make sure I don't overstate things. I can't stand the constant overstating we get and the attention-seeking and hype-chasing we get in the media world. So I try to stay away from it. But in this case, I'm comfortable saying I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback do the things as consistently as he does it and as accurately as he does it, play after play. And I'll answer it this way. There have been other quarterbacks that were awe-inspiring, okay? Cam Newton, we were in awe of him. Well, he's 6'6", 260, running a 4.4, and nobody could tackle him. It was his physicality that you were in awe of. Johnny Manziel, he was jaw-dropping in his ability to improvise, you know, scramble and throw it across the field and all that. Tua is not like that. He is jaw-dropping in the fact that he runs the plays exactly the way they are drawn up to execute it perfectly, play after play after play after play. The ball does not come out late. And 9 times out of 10, when he lets it go, it's exactly where it needs to be, about a half second to a second quicker than other guys get it there. And that's why you see these receivers so often catch a 6-yard slant, but instead of 1 yard separation from the DB, they've got 3 yards, and now they turn it into a 40-yard play. What he does on a consistent basis, I'm not sure I've ever seen it before in college football.
Matt, we would call this rat poison here in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to hear that. And I understand it. Look, man, I understand why Nick is that way. Because, you know, as good as they are, if they have an off week during the SEC, you'll get beat. I mean, he understands it. And I think he communicates that better to his players than anybody else. And part of it is the media rant he goes on to make sure everybody understands, as good as we are, look, Alabama has the best roster in college football. That is unquestioned. You can prove it. They have the best roster in college football. But if in the SEC, if they go to Baton Rouge and don't treat it like the biggest game of the year, they will lose. If they host Mississippi State and don't treat it with respect, they will lose. And he understands that. And I think Saban does as good a job as anybody we've seen in coaching at making sure there are no off days, regardless of who the opponent is.
Matt, I want to follow up just one quick question, because you talked about, as media, we make quarterbacks and we make different players and we overreact. We were reading a comment and they were talking about Tua being the best quarterback in Alabama history. Knowing what you know, is that fair? I mean, to look at that and say, because see, I'm hesitant to do that because I want to see more of a sample size, but I can see where you can look ahead and go, man, if this guy stays healthy, he will probably be the best quarterback to ever come out of here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, a nuanced answer to that or in that discussion is okay, I think, Ryan. I mean, nobody in their right mind is going to stand there right now and say, we have the evidence that he is the best quarterback in Bama history. Okay, no, because you need to see it over an entire career. You know, the Joe Namath and the Jay Barkers and those guys did it, right? I mean, over a longer period of time, and their careers are behind them, so we know the totality, right? Nobody knows the totality of this. We can make predictions. We can say what it should do. And so the nuanced way, and I think the way I'm comfortable weighing in on that is, yes, he definitely has a chance to be the best quarterback in Alabama history. There's no question about that. Has he done it yet? No. You got to play Saturday, you know, and then you play the cupcake, and then you got to play Auburn, and then you got to play the championship game against Georgia. And I mean, all those things have to happen first before you are. Can he be the greatest? Absolutely.
Matt Wyatt, connect with him as you join those 25-plus thousands of fans that follow him on the Twitter accounts at Radio Wyatt. This does a great job of interacting with so many different listeners and so many different fans of college football. Does it on Facebook as well. Find him very simply, Radio Wyatt, W-Y-A-T-T. Matt, I'll see you in the press box on Saturday, man. Thank you so much for being a part of our show here in Tuscaloosa.
My pleasure, Ryan. See you up there on Saturday.